because of the trouble in this world, I really do believe that we have a God that doesn't sleep. Before I talk about those ideas, can I say it's great to be back here at Biola University. I graduated here years ago. First, can I say it's awesome having my son introduce me. I've never had my own son introduce me. By the way, he played on your GSAC soccer championship team. I have to mention that. And also my niece Annabelle is right here in the front row, and she's a freshman. Annabelle Chinchen, and my nephew Gregory Bernard is here too. So, and I love coming back to Biola because this is where I met my wife. I was in Horton, she was in Alpha, and the first time, it happens, and the first time I met her, I went right back to my dorm room and I told my best friend Joel, I said, I just met the girl I'm going to marry. He thought I was nuts, but 2 weeks later, I got up enough nerve and I asked her out. I said, hey, Veronica, would you want to go to Knott's Berry Farm with me Friday night? It's dirty Disneyland. But she knew that, and she says, no, I've got to babysit Friday night. Now, life lesson, guys. A lesser man would have walked away, but I came right back with, well, how about Disneyland? And she said, yes, I'll get out of the babysitting, as though that didn't matter at all. We kissed on the Matterhorn. 2 years later, she said yes, and we've been married for quite a while. So it's good to be here, and I want to say thank you to Dr. Pickett for having me back at my alma mater to share what's on my heart. I'm a writer and a speaker, as Spencer mentioned. I've spent about half my life in Africa, and I lead a church in Arizona called The Grove. But what I'm most about is trying to convince people that this world is a broken place. But it doesn't have to be that way because God wants to use your life, your one and your very important life, to change that. I don't think everyone gets that, and so I've written a book titled God Can't Sleep, trying to convince people that the problems of this world are not someone else's problem. And I still don't think, I didn't even think the people at my own church were convinced of that, and so I told them recently, I said, we're going to have a barefoot Sunday, because I didn't think they were bothered enough by the fact that 1.3 billion people go barefoot every day. And so I told them, I said, on Barefoot Sunday, I want you to wear your best and your favorite shoes to church, and then I'm going to ask you to take them off and leave them on the stage and then spend the rest of the day barefoot so you can empathize with how 1/5 of the world's population lives. And then we're going to give your shoes away in Africa. Now, when I got home, I have 4 sons, and all 4 of them said, Dad, that was the worst idea ever. They said, Dad, no one's going to come to church on Barefoot Sunday. When I got to my staff meeting, I had one staff member say, Palmer, I think it's illegal to drive barefoot in Arizona. I said, I don't care. We're doing Barefoot Sunday. Another one said, I think that the asphalt might be hot, and so I think we should buy everyone at church Japanese slippers to wear home. I said, that's ridiculous. We're not buying the stinking Japanese slippers. The morning of Barefoot Sunday, my wife gets up early, Veronica, and she looks at the paper and she said, oh no, it's going to be a record high. This was September, 107 degrees today. And I said, good. People's feet will sizzle on the asphalt and they'll remember what it's like to go barefoot. The good news is, when I got to church, my sons were wrong. We have 3 worship services on Sunday, and every one of them was packed. We had a record high attendance, and then people left a mountain of shoes on our stage. And then the best part was that summer, that summer we had over 100 people serve in Africa on 15 different teams. My favorite team was our dirt bike team. I put about a dozen people on motorbikes and sent them out into the Liberian jungle just to give shoes away. And here's the thing. I started to plan our next Barefoot Sunday this last fall, and I had people come to me and they said, Palmer, we already did this. Why are we doing a Barefoot Sunday again? And when people say that to me, I tell them about Malawi. I was there a few years ago when I was a college pastor in Wheaton. I had taken basketball players, and we were standing out. Okay, I can use a handheld if that happens again. Sorry, everybody. We're in Malawi, and we're standing outside of a gym door, and we're waiting for the team that we're going to play later that night to finish their practice. And as my guys are watching, some of them start pointing and laughing. I go, what's so funny, guys? They say, well, look, Palmer, there's a guy playing with a shoe on his right foot, and he's barefoot on his left. And then look at that other guy, has a shoe on his left foot, and he's barefoot on his right. It's the funniest thing we've ever seen. And then they turned to my brother Paul, who still lives in Malawi, and they said, why are these guys playing with one shoe on and one shoe off? And he said, well, what happened is one of the guys showed up today, and he had no shoes, a guy about 20, 21 years old. And his friend did not want him to be embarrassed when you, the Americans, got here, so he took off one of his shoes, so at least he would have one shoe on when you got here. Now, there's a lot of things that bother me that are not right in Africa, but for some reason that just sat in my gut. And each time back to Africa, then I started to take a suitcase, 2 suitcases full of shoes. And then when I went to Haiti, I took suitcases full of shoes. And when I've gone to Cuba, I've taken suitcases full of shoes. And finally, I told the people at the Grove, I said, I don't have enough shoes. I need your shoes, too. And so we've had our second annual Barefoot Sunday, and we just loaded a shipping container with 10,000 pairs of shoes to go to Liberia. One of the reasons is when I spoke at Cedarville University last fall, they held a Barefoot Thursday, and their students left 3,000 pairs of shoes on one day, and we sent those in the container. We've had shoes come from all over the country now, and now we get to go and give those away this summer. In many ways, those shoes, don't miss this, are a metaphor for the fact that something is not right in this world, and you can help change that. Maybe you can't put shoes on 1.3 billion bare feet, but one church can put shoes on 2,000 bare feet. One university can put shoes on 3,000 bare feet. You can put shoes on one person's bare feet, and that makes a world of difference. You see, sometimes I feel like we fall asleep to the trouble that's in this world, and we think it's someone else's problem. But when Paul writes, he says it's not like that. You can look in your Bibles with me, Ephesians 5:14, and he writes this simple 2 lines, "Wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Be careful then how you live. Make the most of every opportunity." I love it that college students hate to sleep. You guys will make a run to find food at 2 in the morning. I know that happens, and I love that. But the truth is, most Americans, we love our sleep. I know that because we have our pillow top mattresses. We have sleep number beds. We have a mattress company in Arizona called Sleep America, and their slogan on the radio rings, "Where America goes to sleep." And when it comes to the trouble of this world, I feel in my gut that the American church has fallen asleep. As Spencer said, I grew up in Liberia, and when I was a kid, there was a president running for re-election, and his slogan was this, "Mat to mattress." And he promised everyone in the country, if you re-elect me president, I'll get your children off the bamboo mats on the dirt floors and onto a mattress. That was years and years and years ago when I was a kid. I've been back to Liberia about 6 times since the Civil War ended. Can I tell you where the children of Liberia sleep? They're still sleeping on bamboo mats on dirt floors. My friend Kathy, after she came back from Rwanda, she said, "Palmer, what sleep number do you give a bamboo mat on a dirt floor?" This idea God can't sleep, it's really a Liberian phrase. Liberians say it often when things are not right or not fair. It means God gets justice. God wants justice. God is bothered by things that are unjust and not right. God is bothered by oppression. And if God can't sleep when things are not right, I hope you can't either. And so I want to say this morning, wake up. Wake up and see how the desperateness and the brokenness that is out there in this world. And Ephesians 5:14 in the Message Bible, it reads like this: "Wake up from your sleep, climb out of your coffins. Christ will show you the light. So watch your step, use your head, make the most of every chance you get." These are desperate times. And so I wonder this, I better watch where I'm stepping. What keeps you up at night? What bothers you? Does it bother you, for example, that every day, today, 27,500 children will die from preventable diseases? Or does it bother you that every 5 seconds a child dies from hunger? Or does it bother you that 27 million people live in slavery? Does it bother you that 1 million children are being traded for sex right now, or 2 million children are HIV positive? Or does it bother you that 840 million people, twice our population, will go to bed hungry tonight? Here's what I love about college students. you really are bothered by those things. And in many ways, I'm just here this morning to inspire you and say, keep living that way. I feel like as Christians get older, we lose that passion. I would say, don't lose it. Go after those things that God has laid on your heart and burdened you with. I was just on the Point Loma campus, and they have flyers all over like you guys do on walls. And one girl by the name of Christian, she's a sophomore, she's put up these little 8.5 by 11 flyers that have the name of her ministry at the top. It's called Beacon of Light. And the flyer says, meet in the Nice dorm kitchen at 5 o'clock on Wednesday. We're making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And then we're driving through downtown San Diego, and we're giving them away. Do you know what Christian has realized? That the hungry people of San Diego are not someone else's problem. Christian has realized that she can change something. When I say that, I think of Katie Ponsonis. Katie was a student at ASU in Arizona, and she attended the Grove. And I'll tell you why this rim's here in just a second. You beat me to the punch. But Katie walked in my office before we were leaving, and she had a white envelope in her hand. And she said, Palmer, you know I can't go to Africa with you this summer, but here's my babysitting money from the last 2 months. It was $100, and she said, do something for the kids in Africa. And I said, well, Katie, what do you want me to do? She said, you'll know. I said, Katie, I don't know. She said, you'll know. So I took her money and went to Africa, and I had another sports ministry team, and we're doing basketball clinics on high school campuses. And we ended up on one court outside of Lilongwe. And this is what their court looked like when we got there. We had to use coat hangers to get the rim straight, and then we duct taped some boards in place and led our clinic, and there's grass growing through the asphalt. And after we were done, I pulled Dowd over them, allowing that invited us there. I said, Dowd, you've got to tell the principal he's got to spend some money on his court. I said, you can't lead sports ministry on a court like this. And he said, Palmer, I've tried, but he says there's no money. I said, well, how much could it cost? He said, well, maybe to hire a welder and a carpenter and buy some lumber, maybe $50 to fix this rim and maybe about another $50 to fix that rim. I said, a girl by the name of Katie Ponsonis sent you that $100. And so I gave it to him, and about a month later, he sent her an email with these JPEGs, and his note read something like, Katie, hey, we hired a welder and a carpenter, and they fixed the backboard and the rims, and then the kids pulled the weeds out of the court, and they were so excited about their new court that they invited another school to come and play them that same day. But before the game, they took a bucket of white paint, and they restriped the court and painted a circle in the middle, and then they thought it would be appropriate to dedicate the court to you. So around the circle in the middle of the court, they've written the Katie Ponsonis basketball court. So who's the blessed one now? We think $100 doesn't matter. We think what we do today doesn't matter. I hope you get that the problems of this world are not for someone else. The trouble is that not everyone gets it that God is bothered by exploited children. God is bothered by extreme poverty. God is bothered by oppression and injustice. But I don't even feel like every Christian, people who sit in church every day, see it or get it. I had someone recently in my own church pull me aside and they said this, Palmer, I feel like you talk too much about justice and social justice. They said, could you talk about it less? All that made me do was the next Sunday, I got up and I read pages and pages and pages from the Bible about God's cry for justice. I have a few of the verses here that I read. We don't have time for all of them. Job says, God says, I rescued the people who cried for help, and I make the fatherless who had none to assist them. I made the widow's hearts sing. I love that. In Psalms, David says, he upholds the cause of the oppressed and gives food to the hungry. Proverbs, evil people do not understand justice. Ouch. The ancient prophet Isaiah says, loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke to set the oppressed free. Share your food with the hungry. Micah 6:8, he has shown you what is good and what the Lord requires of you, but to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Justice is the raging heartbeat of the Bible. And so I want to say this next. Wake up and take and follow Jesus to the places that are like hell on earth. I had the privilege of being the speaker on the Hungry for Love tour recently with the Afters and Sanctus Real and Leland. And my favorite part of each night was was after I spoke, Leland would play their song, Follow You. And the hook in Follow You says, I will follow you into the homes of the broken. And can I say this morning, if you are not following Jesus Christ into the homes of the broken, you're following something. But I don't know if you're following the Jesus of the Bible. Bono was speaking at a national prayer breakfast not long ago, and he says this. He said, the one thing we can all agree on is that God is with the vulnerable and the poor. God is in the slums and the cardboard boxes where the poor play house. God is in the silence of a mother who has infected her child with a virus that will end both their lives. God is in the cries heard under the rubble of war. God is in the debris of wasted opportunity and lives. And God is with us if we are with them. Let that last line sink in. God is with us if we are with them. Now, maybe you're sitting here this morning, you're going, Palmer, why are you taking your theology in part from a rock star? And I would ask you back, why are rock stars writing better theology than many of our preachers? In my first book that came out 2 summers ago, True Religion, the subtitle is Taking Pieces of Heaven to Places of Hell on Earth, I mentioned Sean Penn. And I received, I always get emails back and Facebook messages about my books, and there's always a couple of haters, and that's okay. But this guy writes, he said, I'm really bothered that you tell us to follow the example of Sean Penn. He's just an actor. You see, I said, we can learn from Sean Penn, because after the earthquake in Haiti, Sean Penn moved to Haiti, and he built a tent city for 40,000 Haitians, and he's still there. Here's what bothers me. Why are actors living better theology than many Christians? And that's why I say, if you're not willing to follow Jesus to the places where people are broken and hurting, then you're following something. But I'm not sure that you're following the Jesus of the Bible. And so I'd say, wake up and live the good news. That's my challenge here. All my life, I've heard people say, preach the good news. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say, live the gospel. Gospel is just the transliteration of the Greek euangelion, which most literally means good news. A lot of times people make the gospel or the good news about something that's just internal, some kind of intellectual transaction for God, something for after we die. But if I just make the good news of Jesus Christ for life after I die, for life in heaven, and do nothing about the hell on earth, then what kind of good news is that? You see, that kind of theology, it gets me off the hook, doesn't it? I can over-spiritualize my faith to the point where I do nothing at all about the trouble in this world. This gospel of Jesus Christ was meant to be lived. There's this doing component. When Jesus walked the earth, he lived that way. He didn't just preach the gospel or the good news. He lived it. He acted on it. Do you remember in John chapter 8, we read about him coming into the town of Capernaum, and he sees some men there standing with a mob with rocks in their hands, and they're about to stone a woman for adultery. And when they see him, they sarcastically say, hey, well, Rabbi, what do you say we should do? And I'll tell you this, for centuries there's been conjecture as to what did Jesus actually write in the sand. No one's been sure, but I've done some research on this, and right here at Biola for the first time I'm going to share what he wrote in the sand. He wrote this. He wrote, the first one of you that throws a stone at this beautiful Hebrew girl, I am going to beat you down like Chuck Liddell in a cage fight. Okay, I could be wrong, but I think I'm close, because when he looked up, they had scattered. And by the way, that's my opinion, and you're entitled to your own. But it was true. Everywhere where he saw trouble and brokenness, he did something about it. He didn't turn his back and over-spiritualize his message. I had a moment a bit like that a couple of summers ago. I had a layover in Nairobi, Kenya, and I was catching a flight early in the morning, and my taxi is is flying to the airport. We're doing maybe 60 on this 4-lane road when all of a sudden a minivan changed lanes and it clipped the quarter panel, the rear quarter panel of a Matatu that was in front of it. A Matatu is just a minivan stuffed with passengers, 17, 18 people in it. And the Matatu started to fishtail, and then it flipped on its side, and then it skidded down the highway, rolled on its roof, and when it rolled on its roof, the windows collapsed and glass shot out. Now, if I'm honest with you, if I'm being straight with you on this, my very first thought was, that's someone else's problem, Palmer. You're going to miss your flight. You have people waiting for you in Liberia. Someone else will take care of that. You don't have to. And then in that same nanosecond, it hit me. No, Palmer, you keep telling people the way you live every day, it matters because it's a picture of your soul. It really is. And so I yelled at my driver, stop, and he hit the brakes, and we jumped out and ran over, and we started to ease people through the broken glass out of the windows, and then soon more people came around, and within 5 minutes, we had everyone out, and I was surprised no one was seriously hurt. It was just a few cuts and bruises. And then my driver yells at me. He says, they're killing the other driver. And I turned and I see this mob just about 15, 20 feet behind me. I didn't notice what was happening. And they have rocks and they're stoning this guy down on the ground. He's down like this. And it's called mob justice in East Africa. And the man who caused the accident, they're killing him. It's not justice at all. It's just vigilantes taking out their anger. Without thinking, I sprinted at the mob and pushed my way to the middle, and then I dropped down over his head, and I thought, you know what, at least they're going to have to hit me first. And then I look up at them, I start yelling, stop, stop. And they start yelling back at me, get out of the way, we're going to kill him. And I start yelling back, no, you're not killing him. You're not killing him here right now. And slowly, as I stay over him and I take his head in my hands, they slowly start to drop their stones and walk away. And I'm telling him, I said, you've got to get up. He can barely open his eyes. I said, these guys want to kill you. And he slowly sits up, and the mob drops their stones one after another, and they walk away, and I get him to the side of the road. And now, here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying Palmer Chinchen is a hero, not at all. I'm simply saying that Jesus, when he calls us to live this life after him, he calls us to live in such a way that we change what is not right in this world, that we give our lives to a broken world. And I'll end with this thought this morning. Give your life away to change this world, and God will change you. I'm convinced that something very transformational starts to happen when we live this kind of life. Educators talk about cognitive dissonance or cognitive disequilibration. They say when ideas bother us is when we live best. I think there's a kind, in fact, I'm convinced there's a kind of spiritual formation that happens when we're bothered and when we go to the places that disturb our soul, that we need this disequilibration of the soul, and then we grow in new ways. We become really a different kind of person, a different kind of Christian. I've seen this time and time again in people's lives, in students' lives, none more clearly than in a girl's life by the name of Allison. Allison was at the Grove in Arizona with us, and Allie was in high school. And Allison grew up in a family where she didn't need or want anything. She grew up in a Christian home where she had piles of Christian relatives. From the time she could crawl, she was in church. But by the time she got to her senior year of high school, she was tired of the excess. She was tired of the opulence, I think. She was tired of all the Christian talk. And so she started to hang out with friends who convinced her to buy and drink alcohol, and soon buying and drinking alcohol turned into an addiction. Her parents would find the bottles under her bed. They would throw them away, but then she would find more and bring them back. And as it turned into an addiction, her parents convinced her to go to rehab, and she was in rehab and out and back in, and nothing seemed to really change. The week she graduated from high school, I saw her in the lobby of our church, and she had lost her smile. She has the best smile, maybe my favorite smile in the world. And I said, Allie, you need to go to Africa with me this summer. And she shot right back, I will. Just like that, on the spot. And I said, you will? She said, I will. I said, okay. And so we got her a ticket. And when some of my staff heard she was going with me, they said, Palmer, do you know her life's kind of a mess right now? Are you sure? Yeah, we don't think she should be going with you. I said, no, that's why I want her to go. And Allie went to Malawi with me, and for 2 weeks she held babies and toddlers who are orphaned by AIDS. For 2 weeks, she just loved them. I think she saw that she had something that orphans in Africa don't have. It's just love. And it's the love of Jesus Christ was just spilling out. When we got back, she told me this. She said, I will never be the same person again. And she hasn't been. She enrolled in a great Christian college, but she was only there for a semester, and then she told her parents, I'm leaving to serve in Australia with YWAM. She went for 6 months, came back for another semester, and she put in just one semester when she told them, I'm leaving again for 6 months. This time she went to South Africa. She came back and she did another semester, and then she left again for Ethiopia. She's still in school. A lot of you may know her. She's back at Biola right now. It's Allison Smith. She's right here in the second row. Allison, thank you for living that way. We can learn from Allison. She's leaving again this summer to serve, but God has a new grip on her life, and she's living differently. That's why I say, give your life away to change this world, and God will change you. Something very transformational starts to happen. Thank you for having me at Biola this morning. It's great to share.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.